Crush a single leaf between your fingers. It smells like celery, only sharper, deeper, more alive. That smell defined every meal in the Roman Empire. Then the grocery industry decided it was too flavorful to sell. The plant is called lovage. Its Latin name is Levisticum officinale, but that name is itself a corruption of an older word, ligusticum, meaning of Liguria, the coastal region in northwestern Italy, where the plant once grew wild on limestone hillsides above the sea. Pliny the Elder wrote about it in his Naturalis Historia, completed in 77 AD. He said lovage grew wild in the mountains of Liguria, its native country, but at the present day it is grown everywhere. Everywhere. A first-century Roman naturalist looked at the known world and concluded that this one plant had already reached every corner of it. He was not exaggerating. The oldest surviving cookbook from the ancient world is a collection known as Apicius, or De Re Culinaria, compiled around the 4th century AD from recipes stretching back to the 1st. The book contains 455 recipes. Lovage appears in 163 of them. Not garlic, not onion, not salt. Lovage. It is the single most frequently used herb in the entire collection. A food historian named Ken Albala counted every reference. 163 out of 455. More than one in every 3 recipes the Romans considered worth preserving called for the same green leaf. They used it in sauces for roasted boar. They ground its seeds into pastes for oysters and mussels. They chopped it into stews of lentils and chickpeas. They stirred it into spiced wines. They mixed it with pepper, cumin, coriander, and garum, the fermented fish sauce that served as Rome's universal condiment, and they poured it over everything from grilled fish to braised turnips. For 1,500 years, from the Republic through the Empire and deep into the medieval period, lovage was the foundational flavor of Western cooking. One leaf could season an entire pot of soup. One stem could perfume a gallon of stock. The taste was celery but amplified, with notes of parsley, anise, and something faintly peppery that does not exist in any other plant in the Apiaceae family. And then, sometime in the middle of the 20th century, America forgot it existed. Lovage is a perennial. It grows from a deep, woody taproot that, once established in the ground, requires almost nothing from the gardener for the next 15 to 20 years. You plant it once, it comes back every spring. It breaks dormancy in April, sends up thick, hollow stems from a basal rosette of dark green, glossy leaves, and by midsummer it stands 6 to 8 feet tall. A mature plant photographed in Germany measured 2.78 meters. Nearly 9 feet of edible green architecture rising from a single root that was planted years ago and never replanted. Every part of the plant is usable. The young leaves go fresh into salads. The mature leaves dry beautifully for winter soups and broths. The hollow stems can be candied like ginger, sliced thin and added to stir-fries when they are still tender, or used as aromatic straws for Bloody Marys and tomato-based drinks. The seeds work as a spice in breads, pickles, and coleslaw. The roots are edible, traditionally boiled as a root vegetable or grated raw into salads. The Shakers, those meticulous communal farmers of the American Northeast, grew lovage extensively through the 1800s. They dried the leaves for their medicinal sales catalogs and candied the roots in sugar, producing a confection they called smallage. They shipped lovage cordials across the expanding country. In England, an alcoholic lovage cordial mixed with brandy at a ratio of 2 to 1 was a traditional winter drink. Or, especially popular in Cornwall, where it was originally added to slightly spoiled smuggled brandy to disguise the taste of salt. In Austria, the seeds are infused into vodka and called Lustschnaps. In Poland, where lovage is known as lubczyk, it is a staple in soups and was used in love charms. There was a tradition in which girls would pick lovage at midnight under a full moon and recite an incantation. Lubieniek, I pick you with my 5 fingers and my 6th hand. Let people chase my friendship right away. In Ukraine, where the plant is called lubistok, women brewed infusions of the leaves as a hair rinse to attract men with its warm, spicy scent. There was a folk belief that truly beautiful women had been bathed in lovage as infants. The whole medieval world hummed with this plant, and the medieval world's most powerful man ensured it would stay that way. In the year 800 AD, Charlemagne, emperor of the Franks, and later crowned emperor of the Romans, issued a document that would shape European agriculture for 1,000 years. The Capitulare de Villis was a detailed set of instructions for managing the imperial estates. Chapter 70 listed the plants that every estate was required to grow. Not recommended, required. Without these plants, a farm was considered incomplete, and the steward who ran it could face consequences. On that list, between fennel and parsley, stood one word, levisticum. Charlemagne did not put lovage on the vegetable list. He did not put it on the medicinal list. He put it on the compulsory list, alongside plants so essential to survival and governance that their absence was treated as negligence. Wheat was on that list. So were onions, garlic, and the common kitchen herbs. Lovage stood among them as an equal. From that edict forward, Every monastery garden in Western Christendom grew lovage. The Benedictine monks documented its uses as a digestive aid, a respiratory tonic, a remedy for flatulence and colic in children. But mostly they grew it because food cooked without lovage tasted fundamentally incomplete. Walk into a reconstructed monastery garden today, from Ireland to southern Germany, and you will find lovage growing in the physic beds. It has been there for 1,200 years. And in some places, it has been there without any help at all. Medieval monasteries across Europe lie in ruins now, their communities scattered 5, 6, 8 centuries ago. But in those ruins, lovage still grows, wild, untended, thriving without human care, because that is what perennials do. They outlast the systems that tried to control them. When European colonists crossed the Atlantic in the 1600s, lovage came with them. By 1806, American agricultural surveys documented 4 distinct cultivated varieties. Thomas Jefferson grew herbs extensively at Monticello, and the broader gardening culture of early America treated lovage as a kitchen staple on par with parsley, sage, and thyme. It appeared in seed catalogs. It appeared in home medical guides. It appeared in recipe books as a foundational flavoring agent for soups, stews, and broths. Then came the transformation that changed American food forever. In the mid-1800s, Italian farmers began breeding a different plant in the same family, celery. They selected for traits the emerging commercial market demanded: milder flavor, thicker stalks, upright, uniform growth. In 1889, according to a Denver Post article from 1938, an Italian gardener named Pascal discovered that burying immature celery stalks in soil made them sweeter by blocking sunlight. The process was called blanching. Pascal celery became the industry standard: trenched, blanched, predictably mild. By 1900, American farms were scaling up celery production in Colorado, Michigan, and California. The crop was brutally labor-intensive. A celery farmer named F. Burton told the Denver Municipal Facts Journal that celery is one of the most treacherous crops. In order to grow celery, you have to understand it. Let it get too chilly in the spring and it will go to seed. Give it too much water and it will rust. But despite the difficulty, celery had one feature that lovage would never possess: predictable uniformity. Commercial celery grows in neat stalks measuring 10 to 12 inches. An entire field matures within days of the same moment, allowing for single-pass mechanical harvesting. Machines can top the plants. Machines can sort by size. Machines can pack for shipping. The stalks are pale, watery, and offensive. They offend no palate. They threaten no recipe. They are, in the most literal sense, the absence of flavor pretending to be food. Lovage refuses every single one of those requirements. It grows 6 to 8 feet tall with stems that vary in thickness depending on their position on the plant. You do not harvest it all at once. You cut the outer leaves as you need them, leaving the center to keep producing. The plant does not mature on a schedule. It simply keeps growing, from April through October, year after year. The deep taproot makes mechanical harvesting impossible. The flavor varies by leaf age, by season, by rainfall, by how much sun the plant received that week. Lovage can never deliver the identical taste that industrial food processing demands in batch after batch, product after product, from January to December. Industrial agriculture is built on standardization. Lovage offers the opposite. But there was a deeper problem, one that had nothing to do with flavor or harvesting logistics. It had to do with the economics of dependency. Commercial celery is an annual. A farmer plants celery seeds in spring, the crop grows, gets harvested, and dies with the first frost. Next spring, that farmer needs new seeds. The modern celery market runs on hybrid cultivars. F1 crosses bred for uniformity and disease resistance. Seeds that cannot be saved and replanted because the second generation will not breed true. Every year, every farmer, every garden, every commercial operation must go back to the seed company and purchase again. Lovage eliminates that transaction. You plant it once, 15 to 20 years of harvest from a single root. The plant divides itself naturally. Neighbors share root divisions over the fence. Seeds fall to the ground and germinate on their own. From a seed company's perspective, lovage is a product that destroys its own market. One sale, then nothing for 2 decades. That is not a business. That is a business model failure. The global celery and coriander produce market was valued at $2.69 billion in 2023 and is projected to reach $3.84 billion by the end of the decade. The celery juice market alone was worth $1.2 billion in 2024, projected to reach $2.8 billion by 2033. Celery oil adds another $642 million. Every year, farmers purchase hybrid seeds that legally cannot be saved. Then there is celery salt, celery powder, celery extract, an entire multi-billion-dollar ecosystem built on a plant that requires buying it again every single spring. In 1919, a botanist named Ulysses Prentice Hedrick published Sturtevant's Edible Plants of the World, a 600-page tome documenting every food plant known to civilization. On the entry for Levisticum Officinale, he wrote that the flavor was too pronounced for modern American tastes. Not toxic, not inferior, too flavorful. Read that sentence again. A scientist looked at the most frequently used herb in Roman history and concluded that the problem was that it tasted like too much. That was code. Mild celery ships well. It stacks in uniform bundles. It sits in refrigerated supermarket shelves for a week without wilting visibly. It offends no one, and most importantly, it dies every winter, so you must buy it again. Lovage spoils that entire model. By the 1950s, Lovage had effectively vanished from mainstream American kitchens. Seed catalogs still listed it, buried between lemon balm and marjoram, but the average gardener had never heard of it. Food writers in the 1970s began calling it the forgotten celery. As late as 1979, Mother Earth News published a growing guide calling Lovage the easy-to-cultivate perennial herb that tastes like the real thing. Notice the language. By that point, the original had been linguistically demoted to a copy of the annual replacement. The perennial that defined 15 centuries of Western cooking was now being marketed as a substitute for the annual that replaced it. And there's one more detail that almost no one mentions. Walk into any grocery store in America, go to the spice aisle, and pick up a jar labeled celery seed. There's a reasonable chance you're not holding celery seed at all. The spice marketed as celery seed has historically contained Lovage seed, because the two are so closely related that they are nearly indistinguishable in dried form. A food historian at CB Antiquorum noted this with dry precision. Curiously, the spice marketed as celery seed often contains Lovage seed. So maybe we have been using this obscure herb all along. The herb they told you was forgotten has been hiding in plain sight, mislabeled on your shelf, sold under the name of the plant that replaced it. In Germany, Lovage has a nickname. They call it Maggikraut, Maggi herb, because its flavor is so close to Maggi seasoning sauce, the umami-rich condiment that has been a kitchen staple in German households since the 1960s. The connection runs deep enough that many Germans assume the sauce was made from the plant. It was not. But the fact that an entire country named the plant after a commercial product, rather than the other way around, tells you everything about how thoroughly the industrial food system has rewritten the relationship between humans and what they eat. Today, Lovage exists in the margins. Heirloom seed companies carry it. Permaculture advocates grow it. Forager chef Alan Burgo, who calls it celery on steroids and perhaps his all-time favorite herb, has built a small following around his Lovage sauce recipe. In Poland, it's still seasoned soups. In Romania, the dried leaves go into pickled cabbage and cucumbers. In the Netherlands, fresh Lovage is traditionally cooked with white asparagus and served with boiled eggs. But in the country that consumes the most celery on earth, you cannot walk into a single produce section of a single supermarket chain and buy a bunch of Lovage. The produce manager will not know what you're talking about. Meanwhile, 20 feet of refrigerated shelf space is devoted to Pascal celery. All of it annual, all of it purchased yearly, all of it tasting like water that has been told a rumor about flavor. The displacement was not natural selection, it was economic selection. The food system chose the plant that required dependency, and the perennial that fed Roman legions, seasoned medieval feasts, and stood on Charlemagne's list of mandatory crops became a curiosity in the back pages of seed catalogs, referenced in food history journals as forgotten. A 2022 analysis put it plainly. Lovage is the single most frequent herb in the entire collection of Apicius, but is seldom seen today. That gap between ubiquitous and invisible is not an accident of taste. That gap was designed, but Lovage does not care about design. It does not care about market share or shelf uniformity or the recurring revenue model of annual seed sales. It is a perennial. It has been outlasting empires for 2,000 years. It outlasted Rome. It outlasted Charlemagne's Franks. It outlasted the Benedictine monasteries that grew it in their physics gardens. When those monasteries crumbled and the monks scattered and the roofs caved in and the walls returned to rubble, Lovage kept growing in the ruins, sending up 6 feet of green stem every April into air that no longer carried the sound of vespers. It is available right now for less than the price of 2 bunches of grocery store celery, 1 packet of seeds, 1 root division from a neighbor who already grows it. Plant it in rich soil, give it sun, and walk away. It will be there next spring, and the spring after that. And for the next 15 to 20 springs after that, producing from April to October, asking nothing, buying nothing, needing no one's permission to come back. The industrial food system needed you to forget this plant because it could not monetize something that refuses to die. They replaced it with an annual that is milder, blander, more uniform, and more dependent. That replacement worked perfectly for the spreadsheets. But the original is still growing in the ruins.